Caring for Kids God's Way, a biblical counseling certificate program in child advocacy developed by the American Association of Christian Counselors through Light University. Your ministry is to be a Galatians 6:2 helper. Ours is to equip you with the highest level of advanced training from the world's leading Christian counselors. 24 experts teaming up to create the most comprehensive child studies curriculum for the personal classroom. May the Lord bless your study as you begin caring for kids God's way. Teacher, lecturer, marriage and family therapist, co-author of 2 books on sexuality and depression. Caring for Kids God's Way presents Dr. Catherine Hart Weber, Stressed or Depressed.
Hello, I'm Dr. Catherine Hart Weber, and thank you for joining me for this videotape on stressed or depressed teens. I'm sharing from you from a book that I've written actually on teenagers and parenting teens entitled Stressed or Depressed. And I'm sharing with you as a therapist and a professional, and I'm also sharing with you as a parent because I have 2 teenage daughters myself, and my eyes have been really opened to the world that teenagers live in today and some of the struggles that they are facing. This generation is facing challenges that are really different from generations before. We are realizing now that although some teenagers are doing very well and they seem to be thriving and contributing to society in a healthy way, there are other teenagers who are really struggling, who are struggling with depression and stress and anxiety and other related problems. And this is really now to the level of what they're considering an epidemic in our culture. We've noticed that there has been quite a large increase in the cases of children and adolescents who are experiencing emotional and mental disorders. In generations before, we have not seen as much as we are seeing today. For instance, in depression, we're noticing that there is 2 or 3 times higher chance of an adolescent today experiencing depression than in generations before. Adolescents now is the population who are experiencing mostly the increase in depression. They experience the increase in anxiety and definitely an increase in stress and stress-related difficulties. They just live in a different time. They seem to be experiencing a lot more challenges, a lot more pressure, and they live a much busier life. And all of these, we will see, are contributing to some of the challenges that teenagers are facing, and even children now. But the good news is that we know a lot more about stress, anxiety, and depression than we ever have. And so we have now also the ability to intervene and to provide interventions for the youth today. And so those of you who are listening, who are caregivers, counselors, teachers, youth workers, anyone involved in the lives of teenagers, you can find a way and be involved in a way that will make an impact. Because what we are realizing is that the sooner that teenagers and children get help, the better. That is key to preventing some of the long-term and the more complicated related problems that go along with stress, anxiety, and depression. I'm just going to read some stats to you. What we found recently, U.S. teen stats, 21% of children ages 9 to 17 have been diagnosed at some point with a mental or an addictive disorder. Young people today are more likely to be depressed and anxious than their parents, which lead to problems such as increased suicide attempts, increased alcohol use, and a wide variety of physical ailments that we're seeing now, such as asthma, heart disease, stomach problems, and even there are links to obesity. Children eating and comforting themselves a lot more with food. So one of the concerns that we have is, who is suffering with these? What population? We are realizing, and probably you do too, that it's not all those kids out there that are having these problems. We are finding that the children right in your neighborhood, children coming over in your backyard, children in your own homes, children and teenagers, right around us, Christians, and those who are in Christian schools. No teenager is exempt from the risk of, at some point, having a difficult struggle in life or coming up with a difficult challenge. And parents are learning and becoming shocked to learn that their children are experiencing some of these challenges. So it's really important for us to realize that this is something that impacts our Christian community, impacts our schools and our culture, every aspect around us in our lives. Now, one of the important understandings about stress, anxiety, and depression is that there is a link. Very often, when a teenager is really, really stressed, they will be vulnerable or at risk for it to leading to anxiety and possibly even to depression. And very often we see that anxiety and depression, of course, are linked 50% of the time. Those who are depressed will also experience anxiety. So one of the important factors in understanding this link is that teenagers need recovery time from stress. If they don't have the stress recovery in their bodies, in their minds, and in their souls, that will stretch them to the point of breakdown in their physiology, in their bodies, and in their health, and in their resources emotionally and mentally. I'm not going to be able to get into the details of the full teaching on stress and anxiety in this series, but AACC does have another videotape series on stress and anxiety that I'd highly recommend you get and look at, because it's quite excellent in explaining the importance of stress recovery. The other thing that stress can do is make teens sick. And we see now that, for instance, a lot of the emergency room visits, a lot of the doctor's office visits are pain-related and physical-related symptoms, such as headaches and stomach aches and frequent colds and the flu, or even possibly pneumonia. And those kinds of things are what are breaking down the health of children and teenagers. And that's what usually is the way that it's first noticed or even diagnosed. The other important factor about the link between stress and depression and anxiety is that there are skills that teenagers can learn, stress resilient skills that will help reduce some of these negative consequences of stress. And this is one of the key factors in helping children and teenagers, is to learn these skills. They are still very emotionally immature, they're still developing, they don't know how to deal with their difficult emotions. They don't know how to problem solve and negotiate some of the challenges that come into their life. So they have to be equipped and learn some of these skills. And quite honestly, as adults, a lot of parents don't even know how to help them and how to teach them. So that is why they need to be in a place where they can learn these and get the guidance that is going to help them to prevent some of the long-term and more severe consequences. So how do teens show symptoms of stress? How do we know that they're stressed out? Because quite honestly, teenagers and preteens can really look like they have stress and have problems a lot of the time. Their behavior can really be erratic, their moods can be erratic, and they can be quite embarrassing to parents and act crazy at times. And so it's really difficult to know, is this, are they stressed out, or are they just going through hormonal growth spurt? But let me give you some of the symptoms real briefly that are true indicators of symptoms of stress in a teenager. The first one would be a symptom of fatigue, tiredness. When the body is feeling overloaded, when it feels burnt out, one of the first symptoms is you are just going to be more tired than usual. You are not going to be up for things. You're going to have a hard time getting up in the morning and just moping around. And that is a sign that possibly a teenager is too stressed. Second one has to do with mood. Irritability, moodiness, outbursts of anger. If they are frustrated, if they have emotional, pent-up emotions they don't know how to handle, chances are it's going to come out in venting and irritability and moodiness. Another symptom to look for is they might be fidgety or jumpety. They just fiddle a lot, their legs shake, so they have little tics, and they just seem like they're restless. That could be just venting and letting out irritability and stress that's building up inside of them. Another we talked about briefly has to do with frequent physical aches and pains and problems. A lot of times stress, when it starts wearing on the body, it might be expressed in the stomach or in headaches or in back pains or other parts of the body that are holding the stress. And so you might see a teenager complain of upset stomach and headaches and that sort of thing. That could be a symptom of stress. Another one has to do with really the breakdown and the damage done to the body, and that's lowered immune system. Frequent colds, frequent even getting pneumonia and that sort of thing. The body, the immune system just starts breaking down, and so illness and the physical problems are another big symptom of overload and stress for teenagers. Of course, another one is sleep problems. A teenager will have a difficulty getting to sleep, falling asleep, and needing to sleep a lot longer. And teenagers actually need a lot more sleep. Some say 9 hours is average, but teenagers can sleep up to 10 to 12 hours, especially on the weekends. And if they do and they need to, let them. They need the recovery time. Some of the other fallout of stress in teenagers is self-medicating. If they don't know how to deal, again, with the pent-up emotion and the frustration in their lives, they will find a way to deal with it. And a lot of times that is taking care of the pain by self-medicating, by drinking alcohol, taking drugs, and overeating food, and ways of relieving the pain. They'll even take cough medicine. I read an article recently said that this is now Generation RX. And if you go to buy cough medicine in this area, in Southern California, you can only buy 2 bottles of cough medicine at a time, because they've had a lot of problems of adolescents getting in, drinking cough medicine, taking a lot of bottles of cough medicine, and getting into adults' painkillers. And so they're putting a caution out to monitor and keep an eye on, especially your painkillers, because teenagers will find a way to relieve their pain and their frustration. So those are some of the things that are signals of depression in adolescence. Now, why are so many teens stressed out? Why is stress a problem for teens? A lot of research and a lot of surveys show very clearly that teens feel, number one, they have too many pressures and demands on them. And this could really come in a very good positive thing. There are a lot more opportunities for teenagers. They have so much more available to them, especially if you're in a large city. A lot more colleges available, they have more gadgets available, more stimulus, constantly upgrading on new systems and computer and iPods and whatnot. But they also have more pressure for these opportunities, more sports and more clubs, and teenagers just say they feel there's too many pressures and too much demands on them. Secondly, they complain of the general strain of life and life challenges as they develop. Adolescents today feel that there's more competition. They feel there's more pressure on them, that they have to live up to, getting in the right college and getting the good grades and keeping up and juggling so many activities being involved in. They feel just the general strain and the challenges of developing. Some of it has to do with the emotional things they go through in relationships, and it has to do with the mental functioning and the pressures on them to perform. It has to do with physically feeling the pressure, for girls especially, for the pursuit of thinness and keeping up with the trends and whatnot. All these add pressure and stress on adolescents. They also say they're too busy. They're too busy being involved in too many things, and there's not enough time, not enough downtime. And this is a really important issue for teenagers, is that if they don't have the downtime, as my teenager says, time to chillax and to just relax and chill out, they don't have a time to really think about who they're becoming, for them to recover from stress. They need that time just to not be so busy. Another factor is that teenagers are tired. They're exhausted. They don't get enough sleep. They have so much to do and so many places to go, and they're just not getting the rest and the recovery that they need. And that is essential for adolescents in terms of stress, there not being a risk factor for anxiety and depression. So how does a teen deal with stress? As I said before, they will find a way. if they are in pain, if they have unresolved pent-up emotions, if they are not able to problem solve and they don't know how to deal with the situations, they will find a way to alleviate their pain and their frustration. If they aren't able to verbalize it, to talk about it, they will deal with the pain by self-medicating, by using food, relationships, even sexual activity, to find a way to soothe themselves and to relieve their pain. They will cut. Cutting is a big new concern now, with even as young as 6th, 7th, 8th graders. They all know about it, and they try it, and they advise each other even on different ways of dealing with pain. And cutting is a great concern. So, if you are working with teenagers and you have teenagers in your life, I'm just going to go through some ideas here on how to help a teenager de-stress. And one of the main points, if you can, is to draw the parents in and be involved in this, because parents are the ones that are going to provide some of the resources, provide the modeling, and provide the consistency of encouraging some of these ways of de-stressing. A couple of them, first of all, is get a physical exam. Especially in this adolescent time, if your kids have had their shots and they're all caught up, sometimes they don't get to the doctor and they don't get checked up. Always take your children for a physical exam to see if possibly there is a physical reason for what they're experiencing. You want to rule out a physiological cause. Secondly, you want to try and understand what is causing the stress in their life. What activities are they involved too much with? Is there difficulty in the home that they're struggling with? Are they struggling with their developing identity, their body? Are they struggling in relationships? Are they struggling socially, academically? You want to try and get to the bottom of the cause of the stress. Then you want to help parents and encourage them to find a safe place for the teenager to talk. That is really, really important. A lot of times, teenagers aren't comfortable going to their parents right up front. They might have some things they want to talk about and share that they're a little embarrassed to talk with their parents about, or they don't know how to even express, and they need someone who is more understanding and trained to know how to draw them out and express their emotions. Teenagers need a safe place where they can talk, they can be heard, they can listen for input and get practical ideas on how to move forward. And adolescents need ideas on how to recover from depression. They need passive ways of recovery and active ways of recovery. Passive are things like resting and chillaxing and having a chance for their stress response system to just calm down, taking a hot bath, sitting in the jacuzzi at night, things that will give them a chance to just mellow out. They might just want to go in their room and read magazines or play video games or some things that to them are relaxing. That's okay. They need a chance to do that. They also need active recovery. Active recovery is when your body gets to physically exercise, and if they can play a sport or go to the gym, encourage some kind of physical activity, because that helps the recovery of the damage of stress in adolescence. Of course, discourage illegal use of drugs and substances and caffeine and tobacco and all of that, because those are only going to complicate and get in the way of recovering from stress. And they can even trigger anxiety and cause depression as well. Now I wanted to move a little bit to talking about depression. In More Than Moody, the book called More Than Moody, the author says that depression is a disorder of the ability to regulate stress, something adolescents have a lot of. So there's a definite link between stressful events and stress buildup in adolescence and resulting to depression. 8 to 10% of U.S. teens, we are told, suffer from depression. So this is about 10% of the population. 1 in 5 of these teenagers are not getting help. They're not getting the help they need. And what we know about depression is that if it is not treated in the early stages, that it will linger and continue possibly even into adulthood, and cause problems in early adulthood until it is resolved. So it is really important to get help as soon as possible for teenagers. Now, just a couple things I want to mention about depression. One is that depression has a bit of a stigma to it. Adolescents are a little hesitant to go and get help for depression. It sounds so mentally ill, you know, and it sounds very harsh. And a lot of times they're more comfortable getting help for difficulties, stress, problem solving, and that sort of thing, because depression just feels heavy. And so does antidepressants. Antidepressants has a bit of a stigma to it too. And I think sometimes in the Christian community, there's been, we haven't been kind to one another. We haven't been understanding, especially of teens and some of the things they go through, because it can look so, and their behavior can look so harsh, and it can look so frightening. But we need to understand that depression is something we were created for the capacity for. We were created for the ability in our bodies to grieve, to move through difficult situations. And so it's really important for us to try and help normalize, to be kind to teenagers, to be a safe place for them so they know they can come and get help, a place where they can talk and be listened to. Now, I'm not going to get into all the different types of depression in a full teaching on depression, but I just want to talk to you a little bit about the type of depression that I'm talking about in terms of what we're seeing mostly in teenagers. We're primarily seeing a clinical depression that is the result of difficult life events. There is a depression such as bipolar, which is biological, and although we are seeing cases of that, sometimes it is being a little overdiagnosed. A teenager seems to go in a manic swing, and they seem to be up one day and then down the next. Oh, that's bipolar. Well, I just want to caution you a little bit to that, because it might not be. And oftentimes, even if an adolescent has been using substances and nobody knows about that, and they seem high one day and then totally down, well, it could be because they're using drugs or alcohol, and it's putting them on that roller coaster. But for the most part, what we are referring to here, and what we are seeing in adolescents, is the kind of depression that is the result of stressful, difficult life events. That's why addressing the stress in a teen's life is really important, to see that link and to resolve the issues that are causing depression, but also to teach them skills and get at the root of it, which is the stress in the teen's life. So what does teen depression look like? This is one of the other key factors in helping diagnose and treat adolescent depression. A lot of times depression is missed because we're looking for adult symptoms. We're looking for sadness, and we're looking for not wanting to do things and not wanting to be involved and isolated. But in adolescent depression, we see some different dominant features. For one thing, adolescents can go out and they can seem like the life of the party and put in a smile and a happy face, but when they get home, they will go to bed at night and fall apart and cry their eyes out. And so it's very deceiving, because parents could say, well, she seemed so happy, or the friends could say, well, she was at the party and she seemed like everything was okay. But adolescents will hold in their pain a lot of times and be able to still have a facade. And so don't be fooled by that, and just know that behind that could be a lot of legitimate pain and could still be depression. Secondly, that we see with adolescents, we see symptoms more like irritability. We see moodiness, and we see sometimes in boys even acting out, a lot of behavior problems. Boys will land up in the principal's office a lot, you know, and just be a downright pain in the neck, so to speak. But those could be, again, symptoms of depression. And of course, the main one is just lack of interest. Just an attitude of, I don't care. Yeah, I'm not up for it anymore. You know, I'm not interested. All of a sudden, your adolescent who used to be a great athlete They used to be involved in sports, play the piano, whatnot. No interest anymore. They used to have a hobby of collecting things or something. All of a sudden, no interest in doing it at all. It's a total change. That could be a symptom of depression. So what do you do if you suspect or you think an adolescent is depressed? Well, get help as soon as possible. That is the mantra. That a lot of times adolescent depression is not diagnosed until it is more severe. A lot of the milder symptoms are missed. The things like loss of interest and negative attitude and low self-esteem and irritability. Those could be mild depression. But if you see any of those symptoms at all, they could be normal, it could be moodiness. For girls, it could just be PMS, the hormone fluctuations. But watch for a pattern. And what you want to watch for is over a period of a couple of weeks. What do you notice? What kind of shifts and changes do you see? And if it seems like it's gone on for a period of time, get help as soon as possible. Because the sooner you get help, the less severe the depression will be and the less chance of other related problems. Counseling is, of course, the safest place for a teen to be if they have nowhere else to go. Get a teen in a place, working with a youth pastor, so they can talk about and express and identify what the issues are in their life and get the practical help that they need. Now, although counseling and antidepressant medication and traditional treatments, group therapy and interventions for substance abuse are very, very helpful and important, I want to focus on something that will supplement that, and something now that we are discovering in the treatment of adolescents and teenagers is that therapeutic effectiveness will increase when other factors in life are considered, such as physical health, stress levels, their rest and their recovery, as well as finding happiness and meaning spiritually. We must not neglect some of these basic things in life, what seem basic, but also some of the things that are going to increase the effectiveness and enrich our teenagers' lives. They need to learn stress resilience skills. They need to have the practical skills on how to deal with the emotions, difficult feelings, how to manage their lifestyle. They can be getting the best therapy, they can be on the best antidepressant medication, and be having great group sessions. But what are they doing the rest of the week? What are they eating? How are they sleeping? What are the kind of friends are they hanging out with? How are they feeling about themselves? Those factors are going to be essential in helping boost and build up the effectiveness of adolescents recovering from stress and avoiding anxiety and depression, and also coming through anxiety and depression. So I want to just focus on a couple of these. Research is now showing, of course, exercise. Exercise boosts the immune system, and it boosts endorphins flowing from the brain. And so we know a lot about exercise. If you can get the adolescent involved in physical activity, those are natural stress reducers and natural tranquilizers and natural mood boosters. The other is good nutrition. Now this is a toughie, I know. I'm around a lot of teenagers. They hang out at my house, and I have actually had to secretly deliver lunches at junior high to assure my daughter gets a decent meal. They just love that junk food. And it is, I call it white trash. All that white trash that they eat, everything processed, and it has to be out of a bag. If it doesn't crinkle and open out of a bag, it's not cool, and it's, but that stuff does not give them the nutrition they need. And when teens are depressed, they very often are deficient in vitamin Bs, omega-3 fatty acids, and in calcium and magnesium and a lot of other nutrients. And so trying to sneak in as much as you can on the nutrition, give them a supplement, see if they can get a good healthy multivitamin and mineral supplement, because their body will need that to recover and refuel and heal from stress, anxiety, and depression. The other thing we've talked on, they need sleep, rest, and recuperation time, recovery, very, very essential. The other is they need hope and optimism. They need people in their lives who are hope givers. A lot of this generation are saying, you know, show me the hope. Show me what is going to work. show me what is going to help me get through this and give me a sense of a hope and a future. And each one of you can be a safe place for the teenager and become a hope giver. Give them a sense that God has a hope and a future. He has a plan for their lives. He has a plan in this situation. This is not a permanent end of the world situation. And teenagers look at that when they attempt suicide and when they do desperate things. They take a temporary situation and they see it as a catastrophic disaster. And they choose permanent solutions that are very unnecessary because they don't have the hope. So we need to be hope givers. The other thing is they need connections. Research is showing so clearly that this is a disconnected generation. And when you have adolescents who are not feeling connected in their family, when they don't have a good relationship with their parents, when they're not feeling comfortable at school, they don't feel competent, they don't have a place to fit in, if they feel disconnected in terms of other outside activities, that they are vulnerable to feeling stress and to feeling ultimately depressed. Those that show the lowest depression are the ones who are the most connected and who have the most meaningful, enriching relationships in their lives. So that is essential for adolescents, to have these meaningful relationships. I was at the movies the other day with some teenagers, and just before the main feature came on, there was this little Pixar cartoon. And it was about a little sheep who'd lost all his wool, and he had a jackrabbit who was helping him adjust to all the trauma of being naked without his woolly self. And so he came along and he helped him, and he taught him the little sheep bounce back dance. And so the little sheep was doing this little bounce back dance and saying, you know, I'm going to get used to my not having my woolly coat, and I'm going to adjust to this and this new trauma in my life. And I was really struck by that. I'd never seen anything like that at the movie theater. But I was really struck by it because what we see now is really, in so many different ways, especially since 9/11, we're seeing a lot of teaching now and a lot of bits and pieces of what's known as stress resilience, helping children and teens and parents know how to get through difficult times. How do we, what I call, have bounce back adaptability? How do we find ways to deal with stress, to overcome hard times? Because, quite honestly, we will have hard times in life, and our children and our teens will. And we need to equip them with ways that they can know how to move through life, how to manage their own personalities and their own vulnerabilities, but then how to have the skills, how to know what their strengths are to move through these hard times. What does the Bible say about this? The Bible says that we also have joy in our troubles because we know that those troubles produce patience and perseverance. And patience and perseverance produces character. And character produces hope. And this hope will never disappoint us. So God tells us we're going to have hard times, but I have a plan. And this is how it works. You are going to learn perseverance. You'll become stronger. And in that, I'm going to build up your character. And in that, you are going to have hope. You're going to have hope that I'm with you and that I'm going to see you through and that I'll give you the strength that you need. Another link to this is what we see in research and what we see now in the psychological community, in understanding more about not so much pathology and what is wrong with us and how we can fix it and how we can diagnose it, but what can we do to infuse positive things? What can we do to build on strengths to help us through hard times? Dr. Martin Seligman is one of the leaders in the field of positive psychology, and he says, I want to suggest that the best buffers we have against substance abuse and depression and violence in our children has to do with the set of human strengths. Find the strengths in your teens and build on them. And this is another really important factor in helping teenagers get through times of stress, anxiety, and depression. Help them discover their strengths. Help build on those strengths. Help them learn the skills that they need to be able to be equipped to get through hard times. So what are some of these skills? What are we finding in research that are actually very biblically based And we find out a lot of this wisdom, it's not new. It's biblical wisdom that we are just now verifying scientifically, and we're finding ways to practically apply it in our lives. Some of these stress resilient skills have to do with, we talked about meaningful connections. Meaningful connections are one of the most important ways that we get a chance to be encouraged, to find hope, that we see God expressing His gifts through the body of Christ to each other. Another is having a hopeful perspective. When we have a hopeful perspective on what we're going through, when a teenager can see, wow, you got a D in a chemistry, it's not the end of the world. You didn't get picked again on the basketball team. It's not worth taking your life. And you know what teenagers are? They're taking their lives over not getting on a basketball team because they're afraid of disappointing their parents. They're afraid that they feel like it's the end of the world. Here are some of the things that teenagers need to hear. They need to remember that stressful times are temporary. They need to avoid seeing it as unsurmountable. And they need to remember that God is with them through all things, and that a merry heart is good medicine. They need to have a chance to laugh and to see a different perspective. Teens also need to have confidence, a sense of confidence in who they are, in terms of what God has for their lives, and they need to have a sense of competence. They need to have a sense of, I know that God has created me with certain gifts and certain skills, and give them a chance to excel in those. Research has shown that when a teen feels really competent in something, if they can be good at it, they will have a sense of empowerment and a sense of being able to draw from that in difficult times. Now, I know a lot of times it's sports, but a lot of kids are not good at sports and they don't get picked on teams. So they need to be encouraged in things like music or art or even collecting, anything that they feel, fixing things, anything they feel competent in. The other factor in helping adolescents is what's known as authentic self-esteem. There's been a lot done on self-esteem in the schools to try and help teenagers boost their sense of feelings and minimizing things that are going to hurt their feelings. Like not telling them if they're not good on the football team, you don't want to hurt their feelings, you let them play anyway. But that's not helpful. Authentic self-esteem gives a teen a sense of really knowing who they are and what they're good at, so that they can have a sense of, these are the strengths that I can draw on. When I am in hard times, I'm really good at being able to journal and write things out, and I'm really good at being able to meet new people and build new friendships. This is what their self-esteem is based on. Things that are true and real, reality-based. The other thing that teenagers need, they need a safe place to express themselves. Over and over again, the studies and the research shows teenagers want adults in their lives who can help them, who can walk them through hard times, and who they can get input from and share their feelings. They need a safe place, and they need adults like you in their lives, and they need a safe place at home. And I know this is not always possible, and sometimes teenagers have other people in their lives who are caregivers and people they feel safe with. But if possible, try and work on a safe place at home. They need at least their bedroom to be a hassle-free zone, that they can have one place they go to that is safe for them, and then people, adults, that they can share and trust and feel that they are going to be unconditionally loved and accepted. This leads to another important factor, and that is the parents in a teen's life. And research is showing very clearly that the relationship and the attachment bond that parents have with teenagers makes a big difference in helping them get through hard times. It makes a big difference in a hurting teen when they feel that they are unconditionally accepted, when they feel that they can trust a parent, when they feel that there's someone going to be there for them. through thick and thin and helping them through the hard times. Someone who will be responsive to them and listen to them and listen to every aspect of their life. And that really shows great outcomes for teenagers. So I want to encourage you, if possible, to help build the relationship that a teenager has with their parents. Now, often teenagers are pulling away from their parents at this time, and there's things about their parents that they don't like and they don't want to be around. And that's a natural part of development. But quite honestly, the parents are with the teenagers 24/7. They're the ones making the decisions, and they're the ones who are in the crisis situations. And so parents need to be equipped on how to be a safe place for their teenagers and how to be hope givers. So I just want to talk a little bit about how you can help parents and how you as a parent can learn to become part of the restoration and part of the recovery for a teenager, and part of also the protectiveness. They found that this relationship with parents helps protect teens from making choices then to get into more severe and damaging problems such as self-abuse. Help parents get in touch with what their purpose is as a parent. It can be so overwhelming for parents. Encourage and teach parents that they can learn as much as possible about what a teenager is going through and struggling through. What teens are going through at this day and age. I mean, it is shocking in some way, and it is very sad in another way to realize what some teens are resorting to and some of the struggles they have to go through. But learn as much as you can so you can understand their world, get inside their world and relate to it. The other is for parents to develop a plan of action. You know, as you move from one stage of parenting to another, a lot of times we just kind of going through the flow and we wing it. And we know just about everything we do for one phase, and then they moved on to the next phase, and now they're in junior high, and then you just get that down, and then they're in high school. But if parents can have a plan of action to say, I have a sense now of where I'm going with this in my parenting. And for parents to know what their role is. A lot of times we just, the chauffeur and the cook and the activity planner, but I want to suggest that parenting an adolescent is about home-based pastoral care. A lot of times we are really doing pastoral care with teens. We are shepherding their hearts, and we are servant leaders. And so having a shift and realizing your role with parents as a parent with a teen is very, very important. Because then you're not focused just on, I'm a disciplinarian, I'm just basically the police squad, keeping on top of everything. It's much more than that, and it helps parents to have that sense of perspective and focus. I expand a lot more on this in the book, Stressed or Depressed, but I just want to briefly mention these here. In the book, Sacred Parenting, Gary Thomas says that the process of parenting is one of the most spiritually formative journeys a man or woman can ever undertake. And if you've been a parent of a teenager, or if you've seen what some families go through, you know that is really, really true. Parents will be stretched very, very much in their own personal character and in terms of their parenting skills. And I want to mention to you just briefly, in terms of parenting skills, that there's one style of parenting that has been found to be the most effective in helping hurting teens, and that is authoritative parenting. Now, authoritative parenting is compared with permissive parenting and authoritarian parenting. Permissive parenting is probably just too lax, and when your teens get older, you want to be a little bit more permissive. But if you start being permissive too soon, they don't have enough boundaries, and everything goes. And teenagers need to have boundaries. On the other hand, authoritarian parenting can be too rigid and controlling. It says, I am the father, you will not go out, and that's it. I don't want to hear anything else about it. That can really frustrate teenagers and create a lot of rebellion and a lot of resistance. But authoritative parenting provides this balance of still being warm and engaging and focusing on relationship, but still being firm and having boundaries. And that's what hurting teens need. They need to have boundaries. They need to know you need to be home at midnight. You need to get good sleep, and that's really important for you. But at the other hand, when they do come home, you need to be maybe sitting up and being willing to talk with them. Say, hey, I just want to talk to you about tonight. And then being in relationship and sharing with them. The other aspect of parenting that's helpful for parents is to give them a perspective of parenting from the heart of God. That's one model of parenting that's been proven to be effective, but the other is God our Father as a parent. He has modeled to us how He parents us and how we should parent our teens and our children. And that is very helpful for parents to learn and to get a glimpse of. Relate to your teen out of the grace that God relates to us, as opposed to just always being on the edge, reacting to every situation and trying to keep on top of the behaviors. Parent from the heart of God. Another approach that is helpful is parent from the heart to the heart. God goes for the heart. He goes for our hearts. And it can be so hard with stressed and hurting teens because their behavior can become such a distraction that we feel like we are just policing and monitoring most of the time. But God says He looks on our hearts. And so the relationship and the connection between teenagers is really, really important. Another perspective to help parents with is for them to parent as unto the Lord. A lot of times parents feel that their children are an extension of them and that their kids need to look successful to reflect their success as a parent. They need to have the kind of childhood that they never got to have, and their children need to live that out. And it's devastating when parents find their teenagers struggling or having experienced a very stressful situation or struggling with anxiety and depression. Because parents need to be remembered that it's not about them, and it's not even so much about their teens. It's about parenting as unto the Lord. That we do it because God has given us the assignment to love and to shepherd these children and these teenagers. And our role is to bring them to adulthood, to release them into adulthood as healthy as they can, having had as much love and support. So parents need help. And sometimes they need to be in counseling and to sort through some of that. Teenagers can trigger in them things from their own childhood and things from their development that they will put on their own children. And that will hinder the adolescents getting what they need from their parents. And lastly, parents need hope and encouragement themselves. Research has shown that around the time of midlife and a time when parents have teenagers in their home and are going through struggles, it can really be the lowest time of life satisfaction. Parents have said in surveys that although overall they're glad they have children, on a day-to-day basis, they don't have a lot of enjoyment and life satisfaction. And when a parent is trying to parent a teenager who's hurting and stressed and anxious and depressed, they don't necessarily have the skills and have the hope themselves for working through this with the teenager. So parents need hope and encouragement themselves. And a lot of times parents need to get counseling, and they need to learn parenting skills. And they need to know how can they become a safe place for this teenager. How can they deal with their negative emotions? Parents will deal with anger and resentment and disappointment and despair even, not knowing where to go and what to do. So parents need a safe place as well, where they can learn some of the skills, learn some of the parenting skills, and learn ways that they can create an environment that they're modeling how to deal with difficult emotions, how to get through difficult things in life, and how to see God's perspective in redeeming every situation in our life and how to move into adulthood in a healthy and hopeful way. So I want to encourage you, as you are working with adolescents and helping them be equipped, remember to work with the parents as well, and remember some of the needs that parents have themselves in dealing with their reactions and difficulties, because they can become vulnerable to stress, anxiety, and depression themselves. When I was writing this book, someone asked me, oh, what book are you writing and what's the title? And I said, oh, it's a book on parenting teens called Stressed or Depressed. And this woman said, oh, what a great title, because that's just how parents feel when they're parenting hurting teens. So parents need to also be aware of their vulnerability for stress, anxiety, and depression. Can any good come out of any of this? Sure it is. God says that the same grace and mercy that He shows us in hard times is the grace and mercy that we show to others. So I really want to encourage you in helping teens learn practical ways to deal with their stress, anxiety, and depression, equip the parents and help them see also that as they are going through difficult challenges in life, it's all part of God's plan to help us be a blessing to others and help our lives to then reflect the love and the resource that God has provided to us. Bless you as you work with your teens, and I hope this has been helpful, and the rest of the series will equip you to be a better help caregiver to those in your life.